When it comes to Hollywood icons, Jack Nicholson is the quintessential movie star. Charming, charismatic, and versatile, that trademark smile and slick voice are candy for the senses. He may be retired now, but there was a time when seeing his name on the poster was enough to drive everyone to the theater. So in honor of this moving picture master, we are going to count down the top 10 Jack Nicholson movies of all time.
Not where some guy from John Hancock goes every Thursday to get a fucking blowjob! This ain't reality TV!
Number 10, The Bucket List.
I ain't dead yet.
As one of Jack's last movies, the synopsis stands as a fitting tribute to the actor who played every role under the sun. This time, he played a terminally ill man who, along with his equally sick friend, escapes his cancer ward to go on a road trip of a lifetime. As a comedy for the older generation, it showed off Nicholson's ability to mix slapstick with pathos as his actor, Edward, eventually must confront his mortality. In fact, some of Nicholson's own experiences informed the script. Having recently been in hospital himself, he passed on some dialogue ideas and props to director Rob Reiner, like the pair of mirrored glasses which Nicholson had brought straight from the hospital to the film set.
Damned if I'm gonna spend the next 3 weeks laying next to this guy. Zombie boy. Looks half dead already.
Number 9, The Passenger.
There is someone following me.
Another one?
No, the same man. Someone I don't want to meet.
Nicholson is a veteran of the American New Wave that dominated screens in the 70s, but it was his collaboration with director Michelangelo Antonioni that brought to life the character of Locke, a war correspondent who co-opts the identity of a dead arms deal acquaintance. Not only is it a rare example of Nicholson with a mustache, but it's also a movie that Nicholson was immensely proud of. He was very vocal about his support and even bought the rights to the film shortly after its release to help preserve it. When it came to getting the movie on DVD many years later, Nicholson was the figurehead behind the release, in part because of a compensation deal that he acquired when another project fell through. So not only does this film stand as another example of Nicholson in a gripping performance, it's proof that behind the scenes, he is a true cinephile.
I just sold 5,000 hand grenades, 900 rifles, and a great deal of ammunition to some people fighting a secret war.
Number 8, The Last Detail. Another 70s cult movie, and another time where Nicholson sported the stash. In this comedy drama, Jack suited up in Navy uniform to play a career sailor escorting a young recruit to a naval prison. But en route, he takes pity on the emotionally withdrawn youngster, and so decides to show him one last good time along the way. His performance would land him his third Oscar nomination. Still, it almost didn't happen because even though the film was actually completed in 1970, the studio withheld it until the filmmakers agreed to tone down the profanity. But just a few years later, societal standards had shifted and audiences were able to see Nicholson's stellar, foul-mouthed performance.
What are you looking for?
Buns.
I forgot them.
The hot dog's not a hot dog
Then
without...
don't eat the fucking thing then.
Number 7, Batman.
Once you go down to the Globe, follow that reporter Knox, take your camera. See what he knows about this Batman.
Nowadays, it's hard to imagine a cinema landscape without superhero movies, but at the end of the 80s, studios were still dipping their toes in comic book adaptations. But one thing that helped executives feel more confident in their investment was Oscar-winning Nicholson's interpretation of the Clown Prince of Crime. Though Nicholson had played many complicated characters up till then, this marked his first time as a real villain in the traditional sense.
Going to need a minute or two alone, boys.
But he almost lost out on the role. Initially, he was hesitant to take it, so the character was offered to Robin Williams. That was until Nicholson caught wind that the role was going to someone else, so he quickly signed on. And good thing he did. He went on record to say that it was one of his favorite roles to play. At one point, he was watching the movie at home once or twice a week. Yet, the pressure wasn't enough to curb his partying. Nicholson even rewrote his contract so that he could arrive later than everyone else to compensate for his late nights. He'd turn up, greet his co-stars, and fell asleep in the chair while the makeup department got to work turning him into the Joker.
And as you can see, I'm a lot happier.
Number 6, As Good as It Gets.
Well, I work all the time. So never, never interrupt me, okay?
Another fan favorite and Oscar-winning performance for Jack Nicholson was playing a misanthropic, OCD author called Melvin Udall, who forms an unlikely friendship with neighbors when one of the apartments is robbed. Nicholson himself said his character was difficult, but that Melvin was the most lovable character I've ever played. He must have enjoyed playing him, seeing as he implemented OCD tics when the camera wasn't rolling. That level of dedication is probably why it became Nicholson's third and final Oscar.
Help!
If you want to see me, you will not do this. You will make an appointment.
Number 5. A Few Good Men.
Words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something.
Of all the quotable lines ever uttered by Nicholson, his closing monologue in this naval court drama went viral before memes were a thing. Nicholson starred as Colonel Nathan R. Jessup, a key witness in a murder trial who may or may not hold the valuable testimony that would blow the case wide open. In all, Nicholson would be paid $5 million for his 10 days of work, most of which was sitting in the dock. Not a bad gig for an actor. But in fact, Nicholson would work an extra half day for free when director Rob Reiner needed to get more footage. Of the incident, the dry-witted Nicholson admitted it was one of the few times the money was well spent.
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You?
Number 4. The Departed.
When I tell you to dump a body in the marsh, you dump him in the marsh.
For all his time playing cops and detectives, this marks one of the few times that Nicholson played a character on the wrong side of the law, this time as mafia boss Frank Costello. However, Nicholson initially turned down the role. It took a meeting with Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio to convince him, and we're thankful for it. Nicholson would treasure his U-turn too, saying that after a string of comedies, he had wanted to play a villain. In fact, after joining the ensemble cast, the script was rewritten to give him more screen time, although he swore not to wear a Red Sox cap. Initially, his character was a fan of the Boston sports team, but Nicholson's sports leanings are why the signature red hat was left on the cutting room floor.
You got something you wanna ask me?
Number 3. Chinatown.
Get away from me. Answer him. You come near me with that thing again, you're gonna need a pair of them.
Why don't you pick on somebody your own side?
What would this countdown be without mentioning Nicholson's J.J. Gittes? His performance as a private detective unraveling an LA-based conspiracy about orange trees, yes, that's right, is not just a seminal role, but also a staple of the noir genre. They don't make them like this anymore. But making the film wasn't easy. For example, Nicholson had just started his romantic relationship with Angelica Houston at the time, which made scenes with her father a tad awkward, especially when the only time she visited the set was when they were filming the infamous "Did you sleep with my daughter" scene. Yet Nicholson wasn't perfectly happy with the ending, despite how famous the conclusion is. Still, he was happy enough with the character that he even directed the sequel, The Two Jakes, 15 years later, with him back in the starring role. Number 2. The Shining.
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
If there's one shot that sums up Nicholson's career, it's his face poking through the shattered wooden door when he played Jack Torrance, a writer driven to murderous insanity by the spooky goings-on at a secluded hotel. Yet Nicholson was a pro at hacking down doors. Though the props department had built several versions that would be easy to get through, Nicholson had worked as a volunteer fire marshal, so he broke them with no problem. In response, the props department made the doors stronger.
Wendy, you've got a big surprise coming to you.
But when it came to getting Nicholson in the right frame of mind to play the axe-wielding nutcase, the team fed him cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks, something he detests. With all this behind-the-scenes tinkering, one idea that was his was throwing the tennis ball against the hotel walls. Originally, the script just said, "Jack is not working," but probably Nicholson wanted to blow off some steam in the notoriously rigorous Kubrick production.
Wendy, I'm home.
We're almost at the end, so without further ado, our number 1 pick is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Why do you think they might think that?
Well, as near as I can figure out, it's 'cause I, fight and fuck too much.
Nicholson knocked it out of the park when he played R.P. Murphy, a Korean War veteran and criminal who pleads insanity and is admitted to an oppressive mental institute where he eventually rallies up scared patients against the tyrannical matron in charge, Nurse Ratched. Nicholson must have known the Oscar-winning movie would be a hit because he took a percentage of the profits in lieu of a small salary. Considering the film made $120 million, it speaks volumes about his business sense. His performance landed him his first ever Oscar for Best Actor in a Leading Role, ending a decade of nominations and Hollywood classics. No wonder the film has an 8.7 out of 10 on IMDb and a near-perfect fresh rating of 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a masterpiece. All this goes to show exactly why Jack Nicholson is one of the last true movie stars.
Excuse me, miss. Do you think it might be possible to turn that music down so maybe a couple of the boys could talk?
But what do you think? Let us know in the comments where you disagree or think we've forgotten another great film of his. Be sure to like the video if you want more filmography countdowns like this, and share this with any big Nicholson fan you know. As always, subscribe to the channel and get alerted of our next video.